Welcome to What's in the Box with episodes of horror with Donna and Eric. As you can see, Eric is not here. What we've done, you're probably wondering what's going on, is our subgenre episode was too long. So to be conscientious of everybody's time, we decided to break it into two separate episodes. So you will see an abrupt beginning to our episode, continuing with the definitions and examples of the different subgenres of horror. So I hope you enjoy. Yep, they are. Number 6, erotic horror. This subgenre bridges the gap between horror and romance. Vampire fantasy novels usually come under this category, which is also called dark erotica. These stories usually take inspiration from gothic horror with elements of stories designed to titillate and reveal the darker side of desire. I'm going to go right to the elephant in the room, Laurel K. Hamilton. I don't know if you've ever read any of her work.
No.
But she has this series. Guilty Pleasures is the first book in the Anita Blake series. And it came out in the 90s. And I fell in love with this book. It's about a vampire killer, but then she has like some complicated relationships with a vampire and a werewolf. Great storyline, great characters. I would say maybe when it got to like book 7 of the series, it turned into nothing but sex. There was really no story anymore. It was just all about the erotica. And I think there's like 20 something books in the series now.
Wow.
Yeah. I stopped reading her books so long ago. I used to be at Barnes and Noble every October, because of course this was before Facebook and everything, and you had to kind of like guess when the book was coming out. And I would just go like every single weekend until the next book came out. And I would devour them. And then I would be like, okay, now I have a year to wait for the next one.
I know there's nothing worse than getting into a series that comes out every year and you have to wait.
Yeah. And so I was really disappointed in the way that the book went, the series went. It was very disappointing, because I'm like, I like my smut too, and I don't mind some erotic horror. Finding Heaven by Me is erotic horror, but this was just like every time you turn the page, the main character was having sex with somebody else, and it was like, I just can't, like.
That seems
And then
weird. I was gonna say the fact that you said it's 20 something books and this happened in book 7 makes me wonder, did they correct it and go back to the old style, or did this just continue and everybody just likes that?
I don't know. But yeah, it's just, and then it kind of became like, so the sex became like the main focus of the book, because the sex was how she got her power. She was not only a vampire killer, but she was also a necromancer.
That's weird.
Yeah. So it was like she had to have sex with all these people. So then she ended up living with like 5 different guys, like all in one house. It was too much.
Did that coincide with 50 Shades?
I don't remember.
Because there was a period of time when 50 Shades actually started really getting popular to the point where it was being sold in Walmart. It seemed like everything was they were just pushing every book that way. Like, we need to have every book to be sex, sex, sex. And so I wonder if that was part of that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's a weird, I mean, that almost jumps from a story to a parody. The way you're describing it, it makes me feel like it should be a National Lampoon version of the original or something.
And she had another series out, the Mary Gentry series, and it was more dark fantasy, I guess you could call it, because it was about the Fae and all that.
Okay.
And the first 2 books in that series were really good, and I was like, oh, this is a great series, second series from this author. And then it turned into the same thing. Like the main character was a female, and all she did was have sex.
So almost like a reverse harem.
Yeah, kinda.
Because that's
Yeah,
I mean, those are real popular now too. And I guess there's a ton of, I just wonder if 50 Shades of Grey poisoned the well.
yeah.
You know?
And that's what I was thinking too about the Anita Blake series. I'm like, is this the natural progression of where the author wanted it to go? Or is this pressure from her publishers? Because she's, she's
Yeah,
not an independent author. She's, got a big publisher behind her.
but wouldn't you hope that by book 7 she had enough clout to tell them, "Oh, no, I don't want to go in this direction." You know what I mean? Now,
Yeah,
who knows? Is somebody ghostwriting it and it just has her name on it at this point, and they just put out whatever they want to? Patterson's known for doing that. He
yeah,
slaps his name on 1,000 things. There's no way he's writing everything that comes out.
yeah,
So, who knows? That's an interesting deep dive. I don't know anything about erotic horror other than when sex pops up in normal stuff. And to me, I guess I always just throw it all as the extreme umbrella. But I mean,
yeah.
Clive Barker, I guess you could consider Clive like an erotic horror.
Hmm.
Hellbound Heart could have easily been one of
Oh,
the
yeah, for
examples we
sure.
used on this.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about any of these books. I haven't read any of these. The closest I may have gotten is the True Blood series, but I don't think, I know there was like some, but I don't think she went crazy with it.
yeah,
I'm not 100% sure. I know I like the Patricia Briggs stuff, so I'm probably more like paranormal romance is probably what
yeah,
I would fall under. They have some sex, but it's not explicit.
yeah.
And the way you're describing, especially the Hamilton books, is that it got really bad,
Oh,
really
yeah,
loose. So yeah, I don't have very much experience with this. Everything I would think it would fall under is just extreme. But that cover, things have gotten worse since we last spoke. I've seen that book mentioned a ton recently.
yeah. And I have it. I was actually surprised to see it on this card. Um,
I found
because
it on like 2 different lists saying that it fell under the erotic horror
yeah,
thing.
I think it
So
has something to do with BDSM.
uh,
So maybe that's why.
you know what? And I
Um,
have a feeling that, and that's kind of why maybe Clive Barker would fall under this too, because his books have that vibe to them. But we had
yeah,
discussed that over both the episodes of the Hellraiser and the Hellbound Heart about
right.
how he was probably the grandfather of all this stuff. But yeah, so I bet you if it has elements of that into it, they're going to immediately throw it into this subgenre, even if
Hmm.
it's not explicit. Although
Right.
I would be surprised if it wasn't. Now, this Arlie Smith guy, apparently that's all he writes. He writes erotic horror, and that's what he's known for. So, but I hate to say I've never heard of him, but I've never heard of him before.
Yeah, I've never heard of him either.
I was a little surprised to see Wrath on here
Yeah.
but apparently the Book of 1,000 Sins it leans more to the erotic side than it does, because to me he's a extreme
Oh,
horror
yeah.
writer, a
Hmm.
splatterpunk kind of guy, and so I would have just assumed this was more. But from what there's more splatter or extreme. But from what I understand, it does. He dips his toe into this thing.
Yeah.
So I think this was the most surprising card to look at out of all of them. Was when I started looking up examples. I was surprised by what I found, and who was on here. And I was
Yeah.
happy that you gave us the example because then it made my life a lot easier
Yeah.
because I knew where to start with,
Yeah.
because I was like, I have no clue. But this Arlie Smith guy, he's got a couple books. I mean, he's got quite a few books, and they're all listed on all these people's top erotic horror lists. So if you are into erotic horror, you need to go check out Arlie Smith. But I have a feeling if you're into erotic horror, you already know who this guy is. So,
Yeah.
and who knows?
Probably.
I say this guy, it could be a woman. I don't know. It's
Right.
whoever Arlie Smith is.
This
Um,
person. Yes.
yes. So, but yeah, this is the one genre that I don't know much about other than if it pops up in one of the other ones. And that's the kind of cool thing about horror is in my mind, all of these so far have been interchangeable. They've
Hmm.
all kind of flown together. So
Yep. All right, what's next? Oh, cosmic Lovecraftian horror. This one's confusing for me. So, cosmic horror, as a huge general statement, evokes feelings of extreme existential dread. It centers around the idea that everything you understand, hate, and love is under constant threat by something so alien you could never hope to understand it. This threat is often a mere hair from acting, but for reasons unknown to anyone, it either cannot or chooses not to act. It could be extraplanar. I probably said that wrong.
You know what? I
It,
think that might supposed to be extraplanetary, but maybe planar is right. I don't know. They
yeah,
can both jump in there.
yeah. It could reside deep within the oceans, a parasite in the water you drink and food you eat, even buried within your own bloodline. So I've read Where the Gods, no, I read Fear the Gods by Mike Duke. And when I think cosmic horror, probably because Lovecraftian is like what I think when I think horror, I think tentacles. Like,
Right.
I think Cthulhu and, um,
Well, and then have you Hellboy? Have you seen the Hellboy movies?
yeah,
Anytime they mention the apocalypse, I think they do a good job of showing us a glimpse of what they mean by Lovecraftian, because it's always, like you said, tentacles coming out of a dimensional rift, and it's
yeah.
another creature coming. If you like the Marvel movies, I think Doctor Strange does a good job of kind of giving us an idea of Lovecraftian horror when he's jumping around through the different dimensions, um, especially in the second one. They go through all those different places and stuff, and then you have the monster in the first one. Um, Trying to think, when he goes and makes the deal with it, that's kind of Lovecraftian. It's usually like the way I always think of it, like the existential dread. It's that idea that um, any moment something godlike is going to just wipe you off of the earth.
Wipe
And it can be,
everybody off the earth.
well, it could be everybody, but in true Lovecraftian fashion, the characters usually don't care about everyone else. It's always about that character. So that character is being driven mad by whatever the creature in the darkness, or whatever's behind the door, or the idea that there's something bigger than he is that's coming. He could care less about what's going to happen to the other people. It's always about what's affecting him. But then, I mean, the other writers like Conquering Worms and stuff, I'm sure um, they're more sympathetic to the population.
Hmm.
But like true Lovecraftian stuff, Lovecraft was a dick. So I mean, let's be honest. So
Okay.
his stories are all, he the best way, and he's a brilliant. Some of the stuff he did was great, and I think he gave us the fact that he came up with all this, and we're talking about a guy I don't think that had much of an education other than whatever he taught himself. Maybe some normal schooling, but I don't think this guy went to college. I don't think this guy left his town until he was in his 30s or 40s.
Well,
He was extremely xenophobic, and he did not like, and a lot of his stories kind of feel that way. But I think that's what starts his ideas. He's so scared of the unknown in this little town in Rhode Island he lives in, that all of his stories reflect that. Now, the funny thing is as he's gotten older, and a lot of people like to point out that he's racist and xenophobic and all this other stuff, but as he got older, from what I've seen in a couple different documentaries and read, he seemed to open up his world view. But he has written letters to other writers where he says some really nasty things about people.
uh,
Now, he's around in the 20s. And I guess,
yeah.
we're not supposed to, I don't think, you hear that, it's a different time. And then now people are trying to say, well, we can't excuse it. But at the same time, he's from the 20s. He's from the 20s. He's from a town up in Rhode Island, and he never left it until, at least, I want to say he didn't leave it until he was in his 20s or 30s. And then I think he went to New York for a little bit, which probably blew his mind. But from what I understand, he was very tunnel visioned about stuff.
Yeah.
And you can feel that in some of his stories. The unknown, the idea of change within probably the country and the world around him. Um, it probably fueled some of these stories. But in my mind, when I think Lovecraftian horror, I'm just like you. I think giant tentacle monsters
Mm-hmm.
slithering out of the darkness, grabbing you and consuming your soul. And that's the kind of Lovecraftian horror I like. And so I love it when a contemporary writer will take those elements and throw them into a story now, because I think those are fun. And cosmic horror, I think, is cool too. And
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing, really. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about Dawn. Um, so not I forget which one it first appeared in, which year. But the scarecrow like opened the sky, right? And
Oh
that's
yeah,
where those
he cuts through the air and it opens a
yeah.
rift and stuff. Yeah.
And then that's where so would you say that you have some cosmic elements in those stories, or is that just me not really understanding cosmic horror?
I'm not sure it would be considered cosmic. I think it would be more, I think it's more dimensional. Well, I guess it could technically be. I mean, it's traveling through, to two different points in a dimension. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
consider it like a dimensional rift. And so we got our side, and it's a gateway to hell. So it depends. Some people that aren't religious may believe that hell exists as another dimension. Like if you saw Event Horizon, that's cosmic horror to the point where the ship tears a hole in space and they go to a new dimension, and that dimension happens to be basically hell. Um, to me, that's kind of what I'm doing. I think like
Yeah.
he's the vessel that can control the two things. And maybe I'll have some tentacles slither out and grab people
That
at
would
some
be
point.
awesome if you could do that. Thank you.
But yeah, no, I don't know. In my mind, I didn't sit down and think I'm going to write this cosmic or um, you know Lovecraftian horror element with that. I just needed a way to have the two worlds kind of intersect, other than
Yeah.
just having it be the dream world where the pale man could come to him and stuff. They had to deposit the souls somewhere. So, uh, but yeah, in a way, that is kind of Lovecraftian. It's an unknown place, and it requires some supernatural elements and things that they can't control, and the town folks have that extreme feeling of dread because
Yeah.
they don't know what's going to happen. Now, some of the people that visit Dawn, Texas don't, because they don't understand what's going on, but the
Right.
citizens of Dawn, Texas definitely would have that. And so, yeah, I guess you could say it would be cosmic and Lovecraftian in that way. Um, but I'm not sure I'm smart enough to have done that on purpose. So, uh, but yeah, it might be there.
Yeah. Alrighty. Number 8, Bizarro comedy.
And I'm sure people are going to be upset with us that are true fans of Bizarro, or they'll be
Yeah.
upset with me because I'm the one that put the slash comedy on there.
Yeah.
But because I know there are people that read Bizarro and they take it very seriously, and it is not comedy, and we shall not put the two together. But
Right.
for our case, I wanted to make sure we touched on both.
Yeah.
So
So Bizarro is the genre of the weird, strange, grotesque, and bizarre, and it generally makes readers think, what the heck? Um, though usually said in much stronger language. Okay. While some authors write weird for the sake of being weird, most fans of Bizarro don't consider those stories to be true Bizarro. They expect stories that make sense, at least within the story's own set of rules, and resonate with the subversive, satiric, and absurd. That said, there really are no rules to the Bizarro genre. And with that being said, I actually reached out and had a short conversation with Matt Clark, which Planet Bizarro. And he actually explained it in a really Bizarro, that is, a really easy way to figure out what Bizarro is. He said Bizarro is weird characters doing weird things in weird places.
yeah, that sounds perfect.
So I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So yeah. Um, Carlton Mellick III. Of course, you have to have him on Bizarro.
Yeah, there's no way you could pass it because basically everything he does is Bizarro in
Yeah,
its own way. So,
I've not read any of his. I don't know if I ever will.
well, the
Not that,
way I was gonna say the way he falls into it is that his stories all make sense. Like the end of this thing, they all have rules within his thing, but none of it is something that would happen in the real world. Like you
right?
said, weird things happening. So yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't read any of his stuff either. I'm not sure when he'll get on my list.
Yeah. Cows, I was kind of surprised to see on this card. But then as I started thinking about it, I'm like, oh, it kind of does make sense because I have read Cows and it is weird. Um, but I always just classified it in my own mind as extreme because it's disgusting. I don't know if you've read it.
I have not, but I think it might be there because of the satirical and the subversive
Yeah,
part.
yeah. It's actually absolutely grotesque. But I think because one of the main characters is a talking cow, it
Yeah,
could be considered Bizarro.
yeah, definitely. I would say that would be the thing because within its parameters,
World.
it makes
Yeah,
sense,
yeah,
but anywhere else, it would not make sense.
yeah.
But no,
So
yeah, and I think that's the cool thing about Bizarro is that it can be extreme in nature and it can be splatterpunky and all that, but as long as you have an element that makes it outside, because extreme and splatterpunk usually are things that could happen easily within our world.
yeah,
And so I think Bizarro adding a talking cow to that element would push it into the Bizarro world.
yeah. And it doesn't always have to be, you know, disgusting. Matt Clark's book, Life Was Easier Before You Became a Giant Fucking Mantis, is 100% Bizarro,
Mhm.
but it's not really violent.
Oh no, it doesn't have to be. Bizarro can
Yeah,
be completely, PG. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
anything with extreme violence, but a lot of times Bizarro will have the extreme
yeah,
because it goes in that direction.
yeah. Mantis was actually a pretty cute little love story, honestly.
John Dies at the End is the one that I always hear. Everybody references it as a Bizarro. I've
Really.
only I've only seen the film, and I understand why it would be considered a Bizarro, but I haven't read the book, so I don't know exactly how it works out in there. But the movie itself is definitely has elements of Bizarro because it's got so many. It has most of the subgenres we've discussed are in John Dies at the End. It's just all over the place, but it's got its own set of rules that you learn as you watch the movie. So
Yeah.
I assume the book does too. But every time anybody mentions Bizarro, John Dies at the End is one of the first books they'll throw out as an example. In fact, it was the book I used at the dinner because somebody started asking about Bizarro, and
Oh,
so I threw a couple out, and then when I said John Dies at the End, everybody at the table knew what I was talking about. So
it's interesting to also see Blister here because I bought Blister from Jeff at AuthorCon. Um, and I didn't even, I'm a very visual person when I buy books. So I definitely go by cover. I don't typically read blurbs on the back. Um, hasn't steered me wrong yet, people. So don't get mad at me for saying that. um, so have you read Blister
I have
or?
not. I can't remember. It was like a top five on two different lists
Hmm,
for Bizarro, but it could have maybe it was on there for comedy. I don't know.
yeah, let me look it
Um,
up on Goodreads real quick and see.
Yeah,
Um,
because I'm not 100% sure. Part of the reason I wanted to put it on there was just to have a book by Jeff on there. And when I saw that it popped up on the list, I was like, oh, okay, this
yeah,
is cool. I want to put Jeff's book on there. But no, I don't know why off the top of my head. I should have been a little more prepared. Um, Cows, The Haunted Vagina, and John Dies at the End. I know for a fact those could be, I know why those are considered Bizarro. Blister, I have a vague remembrance of why it was listed, but I can't for the life of me tell you what it is right this second.
yeah. So the character is a hideously disfigured woman. She lives in a shed. Um, and the other main character, Jason, is takes them on an offer to go see Blister. And so yeah, I guess it kind of could be
So it's kind of,
Bizarro.
I'm gonna say it sounds like a road trip kind of
Yeah,
thing, and I bet you there's something within that road trip that causes it to step outside of the bounds of reality or our reality and makes it the Bizarro trip.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, not that I'm opposed to reading Bizarro. I just was,
oh yeah, yeah. It's not anything I hunt out, but if I read it, I'm not going to stop it when I figure out that that's what I'm reading. Usually,
yeah.
what the way I would characterize Bizarro sometimes, or if I was thinking about it, it's kind of fantasy horror. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So,
Oh
because a
well,
lot
yeah,
of
with Melik's
yeah, oh,
stuff,
definitely there.
especially
That
the
would be.
haunted vagina.
But like, if you read a fantasy novel, you have to suspend your belief, or your disbelief, with all elements pretty much. If you read a
Yeah.
fantasy novel with magic and all that stuff. To me, sometimes a Bizarro novel is basically just the same idea, just has horrific elements to make it a
Hmm.
horror novel.
Yeah.
So, and I think John Dies at the End also could be considered a little bit of a comedy. And I think a lot of Carlton Mellick stuff is comedy. It's hard
Yeah.
to, I think I can't imagine the haunted vagina. You're not laughing half
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I really can't think of. There's only one book that I can think of off the top of my head for comedy that really strikes me as a comedy type horror. And again, I've said his name a lot during this card, but Matt Clark's Sons of Sorrow.
Yeah,
It is Bizarro, but it's comedy because they're like it's pretty much like Scooby Doo, but there's like no dog.
right. You know who else? You know what else would be? And a lot of people are saying it's Grandpappy by
Oh
Patrick
God, that
Harrison.
book again.
I know, mention it again, but I've heard that that's part of its thing. It's a comedy horror
Yeah,
and gross and all that other great stuff. In
yeah,
fact,
and
every review I've read and was told this weekend was basically it's one of those books that as you read it, you want to stop reading it because it's so just ugh, but you
yeah,
want to see how he gets out of it as a
yeah,
writer. And so you force yourself to continue through it. And I was like, I can't tell if that's brilliant or if that's just torturing us. But
yeah.
I've got it sitting on the TVR to check out. So
But
I know. I'll let you know. I'll let you know, and then you can jump into it. But from what I understand, it's on the funny side. And he's
yeah,
a funny guy, so I can get
is
that.
he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably give it a. Although I might like, because he did a splatter western too, didn't he?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'll probably try that as my first.
He's got a lot of good stuff, some short story collections, a lot of good
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah,
I sh-
I would say try the splatter punk or the splatter western first. So
yeah. Number 9, apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic horror.
stuck the landing.
Yeah. Apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic horror is a subgenre of science fiction, science fantasy, dystopia, or horror in which the Earth's or another planet's civilization is collapsing or has collapsed. Of course, the most classic, The Stand.
Again, he rare. Even though I said I try not to use him, you couldn't get
Yeah,
away from the stand.
yeah. He does a lot of apocalyptic. The Cell was
Yeah,
apocalyptic.
yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say a lot because that's really my only other. I don't think Under the Dome could be
Wasn't
considered
the
apocalyptic.
Yeah, I think you could. I think you could consider that because it's science fiction an element. And even though the Earth itself isn't whatever, but I mean within that civilization, the dome
Yeah,
itself, you have the collapsing of it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you could. And what about the was it the dream? Is it? It's not just the dreamers. What's the one he did when he was high after he got
Dreamcatcher? Dreamcatcher?
Dreamcatchers? He did that after he got hit by a I think a van. He was riding a bike. Somebody hit him with a van, and so
Oh.
he's all hopped up on painkillers. He's writing this thing. He's thinking he's writing the greatest thing ever. And I haven't read the book, so I can't tell you if it's garbage or not. But I can tell you the movie's garbage, and if it's but he said later he went back and read some of it. And he was like, oh, I don't get what I was doing here because he was hopped up on painkillers the whole
Yeah,
time. But it has, I guess some interesting ideas. So but it
yeah.
has the same idea. You could even, I think, almost say it is apocalyptic. You know what? No, let's take a step back. It could have fallen under Lovecraftian.
Yes, definitely it could have been
So
Lovecraftian.
So I mean that's another, and I don't even don't get me started. I don't want to get started on this. We don't need to turn this into shit on Stephen King hours. So let's
Okay, yeah,
go
no, we
back to
don't
the
want to do
next
that.
one.
Bird Box, I haven't
I haven't
read it,
either.
but I've watched the movie. And
That's
I
the one.
actually,
Is that the one where they can't look or can't hear?
yes, they
Look.
can't
Okay.
look. Yeah. You're thinking of The Silence or The
Yeah.
Silent Place.
No, I was thinking, don't speak. Is that what it was called? Don't speak. The one where they can't say anything because the aliens can hear them and then they attack them. What was that one called? You know what I'm talking about?
That's two. There's The Silence and then The Quiet Place.
The
So
Quiet Place. You're
there's
right.
two like that. Yeah. The
Go figure.
Silence was actually based on a book by Tim LeBon.
Okay.
And then The Quiet Place, was that a Josh Mallerman?
Yes. No.
No. Bird Box is Josh Mallerman because it
Yeah.
was based on Mallory, right? Or no,
Yeah.
Mallory's the second book in that. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting it all confused. Bird Box is Josh Mallerman. Mallory is the follow-up to it, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, there's the two quiet movies, the Silence and then A Quiet Place.
You could do I Am Legend would have fit here.
Yep.
That would have been a perfect one, and that's kind of got a twist because it's the vampire, not zombie end of the world. And and that's one maybe we should visit and talk about. I can tell you, I am a huge fan of the movies based on the book, but I'm not a fan of the book. But
Really?
it's been a while since I've read it. So have you read it?
No.
And so here's the thing we're going to learn is that for some reason I don't like anything that everybody loves. So as soon as somebody says they love a book, I'm like, oh, I read that, I hated it. So I'm not the person to talk to. That's why I kind of like the fact that we're going back and revisiting these, and
Yeah.
so I can try and look at them and see if maybe it was just the timing of when I was trying to read them.
Yeah.
But on this page with these examples here, I've read The Road, and that's it. And I tried to read The Stand, and I probably made about 100 pages into it.
Yeah. I've read The Stand like 5 times.
So yeah, I'm not gonna, I know a lot of people love it. I just didn't get past, like I said, and I had the old one. I didn't have the unabridged, so I don't know if I was missing something that just didn't catch me at the time.
Yeah.
But I do
Yeah.
not know.
Yeah.
But I know it's probably is, yeah, it's probably the most popular book he's put out.
Yeah.
People seem to love that one.
You definitely have to read Jamie Hernandez' Urban Gridlock.
Oh
So
yeah, I have one coming.
that's a great post-apocalyptic. Another one that I just read recently, I'm ashamed to say I bought it when I went to New Jersey HorrorCon last September. Neil Cohen is the author, Exit Zero.
I don't know. It sounds semi-familiar, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it actually takes place in New Jersey. So New Jersey ends up being infested with these like zombies, and it gets like segregated from the rest of the country. The only thing I have to say, if you like a zombie book, it's a great zombie book, but it has a lot of like military, political intrigue.
Oh, okay.
So if you're not into like military maneuvers and like, a lot of military action and political intrigue, you won't like it because it's got a lot of that. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward. I believe there's 2 more books in the series.
I like when they take those kind of books and flip them with some sort of. I really like alternate history books where you get like, like Fatherland, or like
Mhm.
What If the Nazis Won, or if you read like Philip K. Dick's The High Castle, um, where they have the Allies losing and they split the
Yeah.
United States up between Japan and the Nazis and stuff. Nothing like the TV show. If you watch it, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Because Philip K. Dick was writing about science fiction, and he was high most of the time. He was writing everything. So all his stuff is just kind of weird.
Yeah, I have
But
actually a book talking about alternate histories. I have a book, it's an old book. I can't remember when it was published. But it's called The Sound of His Horn by Sarban. The author has one name, Sarban, and it's basically a book. It's really small, so I guess it's a novella or novella. And it's basically the Nazis win, and they do like these experiments, and I guess there's like these cat women. They've like done experiments on humans and turned these women into like these cat people, and they like the main character is like being hunted. So
I
yeah,
feel like we missed on a subgenre because I think Nazi horrors probably out there, and
yeah,
it seems like because the most horrifying thing you can think of is what if they actually did win?
yeah.
How would the world be different? And so and then you look at how much he was into the occult and how
Hmm.
much they were into doing all those kind of experiments on people, and you could see how that would be a tremendously um, horrifying genre to try to dip your toe in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but I've read this one where in the 60s, the Cuban Missile Crisis actually happens, and the Soviet Union fires the missiles, and it wipes out the whole east coast of the United States with nuclear fallout and all that stuff. And then the book takes place like 40 years later, and how the United States is trying to have they had to recover from that
Yeah.
attack from Russia and stuff like that's always interesting because you get a little taste of what really happened and what goes on. Um, Usually, when you have those kind of apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic stories that fall within horror, it's always the zombies. So
Yeah.
we could have just listed 1,000 zombie books here, but
Yeah.
I do enjoy a good zombie book, and I love that so many people have so many different versions. I love a classic George Romero zombie, but I do enjoy how terrifying the zombies were in World War Z. And if
Hmm.
you look at the zombies from, because they're not really zombies, but when you look at 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, the fact when they make them go with, they get infected and their zombies are kind of like the rage virus. And so they're fast and they're furious, they attack you and all that stuff.
I hate fast zombies.
So those I enjoy. I mean, I enjoy the idea of it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? If I'm being chased, I need it to be the slow zombie because I'm not running.
Right.
So I'm with you
Exactly.
there. But yeah, I enjoy all of those. But I do enjoy like The Road broke me. I think it's brilliant. I know a lot of people hate it because of the way he writes, but I think it's a brilliant novel. And when I read it, I was the same age as the guy, but more importantly, my son was the age of the boy.
Oh
And
wow.
so when I read that book, it destroyed me when I got to the end of it. So I was like, whoa. In fact, I refuse to watch the movie. I will not watch that movie yet because
No.
I don't want to. I don't need to visualize it. It was bad enough going through the book, but I enjoyed the journey.
Wow.
Trying to think of any other apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic horror things because we talked about I Am Legend. Was another one that might jump out at as something that we really enjoy because I think it's an interesting thing. It's always interesting to think what happens if somebody screws up. Oh yeah, I mean I guess The Walking Dead we could talk about. I mean that's an interest. If you've read the comics that the show's based on, it's not totally different, but it's different. It's a totally. I mean the timelines for the characters are all different, and there's no Daryl in the comics.
No, Daryl.
There's no Daryl. He was a TV show. Now maybe there is by the farther on. There became a point in the comics where I put them down and said I will not read this anymore because they killed the character I like so much. So
Yeah.
I was like, I'm done. I can't keep putting myself through this. But and I stopped watching the show after I think 7 seasons. So
Yeah, I watched probably the first 5 episodes of The Walking Dead of the first season, and that's it.
you don't need to because you decided. But in my mind, season 2 and 3 are brilliant. You got to get through the setup
Mm,
of that first season. But I had already read the books, so I was already where I was. I kind of knew what was going to happen through that first season. But when they get to the farm and then they go to the prison, those are my two favorite. I'm a huge fan of the old man Herschel. I think the character's Herschel, and he doesn't come on until they get to the farm. The farm will break your heart, and then the prison one I really enjoyed. And I think the prison season 3 or 4 is when they introduced Michelle, which is the dreadlocks lady with the samurai swords. She's
oh,
cool.
okay.
And But yeah,
Samurai
so
swords are always cool.
especially when you got zombies, right? You want to be able
Mhm.
to cut them up and stuff. I'm trying to think if there's any others. I guess The
Sure.
Stand probably is the number one apocalyptic.
Yeah. What's the Swan Song
Oh yeah, Swan
by
Song.
McCammon?
Yeah, I have a
Um,
stack of his stuff to read, but I haven't read
so
any
do
of it, so
I.
I never
Yeah.
know what his stuff is to. Because the hit Stinger could have fallen under the paranormal with the monsters.
Yep.
He's got a werewolf book. He's
Yep.
got
Wolf Sour, I think it's called. Nazi
his
werewolves, I
yeah, and he's
believe.
also he's got the Nazi ship. The one he's got a tale about a ship that's like it's a haunted ship that was Nazi occupied or something, and it keeps coming back or something. Yeah, right now we're just guessing, I guess. So it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like it's not a great podcast at this point, but anyways, there's a ton of stuff we should be reading
Yeah,
like
I've
that.
always want I have Swan Song and I do want to read it because I'm really curious to see how it relates into The Stand because I hear a
Yeah,
lot of people say that it's, better than The Stand or because they seem pretty much the same. It's an apocalyptic world and people are on a journey. So I just want to be able to compare them in my
yeah.
mind.
I guess I'll have to give The Stand another chance.
Well, it's very thick, so save it for when you're really bored.
Yeah, and I don't know. I can't imagine the pile will get low enough for me to do that, but
Yeah.
um, I don't know. There's always a chance. I do know. I've heard nothing but great things about Bird Box the book, but I haven't seen the movie or read the book yet, so I don't know for sure. But I have heard good things about it.
All right. And number 10, true crime horror, books about real crimes that involve real people. So, of course, Helter Skelter, Charles Manson. Who
I
doesn't know
would,
who
yeah, I was gonna
Charles
say
Manson is?
pretty much any serial killer book we could have thrown up here,
Yeah.
but I
Um,
figured we needed to have some sort of Manson representation since.
oh, yeah, the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah, I
Um,
love the Zodiac, but it's funny as I'm a big fan of the Zodiac stuff just because of the comics. The characters that they were, they're more superhero villains than anything.
yeah.
But I, I think the Zodiac Killer is pretty fascinating stuff. You ever seen the movie with Jake Gyllenhaal and
Mm-mm.
Robert Downey Jr.'s in it, and it's an amazing story because they don't really know who the Zodiac Killer is, but this guy thinks he does. So the movie's based on this kid who thinks he knows who the Zodiac Killer is, bugging
Oh,
a
wow.
reporter. It's a fascinating movie. I've seen it a couple times. I want to say Fincher directed it. So if you like Seven and all those movies, I mean, they got a great director. It's a guy that's not going to put nonsense out there. I thought the movie was really good. I haven't read the book though,
Yeah.
but it's a fascinating story the way that he did taunted the police and the
Right.
newspapers and sent them the code and do all this stuff. I want to say that's what the movie's about. So a guy thinks he broke the code, and so that they start working on that way.
Okay. What is I've never heard of the Devil is it in the White City?
That is about what a lot of people consider America's first serial killer. Um, and now I'm going to blank on his name, and that's awkward. His name is, well, let me look that up while we talk about Harold Schechter. In the middle, Deviant.
Oh yeah, the Ed Gein.
Right. Harold Schechter is a incredible writer, and he has put out a series of books that focus on different serial killer people and different styles of serial killers.
Oh,
So like he'll have this person as a sexual deviant stuff. Ed, he'll focus on Ed, and then he'll say, well, this other person over here is more, psychologically messed up, and so he'll have a book on this guy. But he's done like Albert Fish, Ed Gein, just a number of amazing full breakdowns on serial killers. But he has a writing style that is very easy to read. So while you're learning, you're also entertained the way he
oh,
writes.
that's good.
And that to me is the biggest problem with um, true crime is if you get more of a reporter or more of some people can't write to entertain you. They just can give you the facts,
Right.
and those books are terrible.
Yeah, that's
But
not what I want.
Harold, and the other reason I like Harold Schechter so much is that he wrote um, a book called Nevermore, where Edgar Allan Poe is the uh, main character, and somebody is going through Baltimore and murdering people based on his stories, and he's helping the police try and catch the person. And he actually continues on. He's got like 3 or 4 books where Edgar Allan Poe is the main character. And I
Oh,
just, the style, the way he writes, and I love books set in that time period. And usually when you get books set in that time period, you're stuck in England. And the fact that this is an American based story, because the first one takes place in Baltimore. The next one I want to say is up in New York, where they have they had the um, Barnum and Bailey's circus.
oh, right. Yeah.
Before he had the circus, he had like one of those museum places where you would go and pay your nickel and go look at weird stuff. A House of the Bizarre or whatever.
Ripley's
He
Believe It or Not kind of place.
Yeah, he had that in New York. That's where they put the mermaid, where it was the fish person
The
that
Fiji Mermaid.
yes, they put that. They have a lot of fake stuff, and they charge people to look at it. Well, so it takes place there, but I think Davy Crockett's in the second one with them. So it's him and Davy Crockett doing something or something like that. So it's just an interesting way. The guy's just an amazing writer. If you want to learn about serial killers or about criminals, he has a plethora of interesting real books and ebooks that you can get on Amazon that'll entertain you. I read the Ed Gein one, Deviant. I read it in one day, and I don't, and this was years ago when I didn't have time to do stuff like that. I ignored everything I was supposed to do for that day and just read this book. It was an amazing book. So,
Yeah.
okay, I'll just say, go ahead and say what you're gonna say.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I've been kind of like interested in serial killers. I watched I believe it was a Netflix show on the Night Stalker.
Yeah, that dude's creepy.
Yeah, so I'm like, what is it, Richard Ramirez?
Yeah,
So ever since then, I've been like, I watched another one. I can't remember. It was a British serial killer. I can't remember the name, but it was another Netflix series. Anyways, I've just been interested, and I'd really like to read a book, so I'll have to check out this author.
Oh yeah, if you like, if you're even just a little interested, this is the guy you want to read because he'll build to it, he'll add to it, and he'll do it in a way that's entertaining. That's the
Yeah.
thing that you're looking for. Okay, so The Devil in the White City, of course, and it's because I couldn't remember what the second initial was going to be. I thought it was going to be HR, but it's H. Holmes.
Okay.
So the book is about the architect responsible for the fair's construction, because at the time he was doing the serial killer stuff, they were building the World Fair in Chicago. So it's 1893 Chicago World Fair. So the story focuses on Daniel H. Burnham, the architect responsible for the fair's construction, and H. Holmes, a serial killer masquerading as a charming doctor. And if I remember correctly, H. Holmes, the building that he used wherever he lived or what he was using as his office, he had it constructed in such a way that there was hidden rooms and stuff. And so he used that to um, lure his victims to different places and kill them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
It's funny because once you started reading the description, that sounded really familiar to me, and I think I have that on my Goodreads want to read shelf.
yeah, it was one of those that came out forever ago, but when it did, it caught everybody's attention because he's such a good writer. He does another one where he focuses on Nazi Germany too, and he talks about some stuff that they did over there. And just every subject he does is well researched, and the guy knows how to write. And I think that's the theme that we need, that you get through true crime. Really good true crime is written almost as if it was a novel with the facts lined up correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're
So
big into serial killers, this is one of America's first.
yeah, I'll have to check that out. The Amityville Horror definitely is a true story. I don't know if I'd consider it true crime though.
Well, the reason I threw it on there as a true crime story is because you have to either believe that he was possessed or that guy just shot his family.
Oh yeah, true. Okay.
So
Yeah, that makes
and I
sense.
think that's how they pushed it, was they wanted you to think there was a chance that this is the house of the devil and voices told the guy to do it, and they had all those other aspects of it. But in the end, we're talking about a dude that took a shotgun to his family. So and I think that's how they pushed it back then. I remember
Hmm.
when I had to get it the first time, it was in the true crime section in the library when I read that one when I was like 10 or 11 as well. So I mean, my introduction to horror was Cujo, Amityville Horror, and The Exorcist. Those were the first three that I remember reading as a kid, other than kids stuff.
Right,
I,
right.
John Belair's. I never read Goosebumps or any other stuff. I don't think, but I
Yeah, I
do have a
never.
whole bunch of weird offshoots that probably would have fallen, like Dark Forces, which was more for teenagers, um, and I have a couple. And of course I kept them because I never knew. My dad threw everything away, so my instinct was to keep everything. Uh,
Oh, I think Eric froze on us there. There we
oh,
go.
am I still there?
Yep, you're back.
Everything that I ever showed interest in, my dad would always be like, "Oh, I had that, but I threw it away." So when I was growing up, I kept all my books and stuff in case my kid was interested. So I have a whole bunch of weird horror stuff from that time period. So
Yeah. All right. And of course, true crime is, I think, the most terrifying because these are real people that did real things to other people. Um, this is not made up. Um,
right, of course,
it's
yeah, always more horrifying to think that your next door neighbor could be the next, Ed Gein or whatever.
yeah. Yep. So that is our 10 subgenres of horror. Of course, we may have missed one or two or three or four. So in the comments, just if you think we left one out, go ahead and you know, let us know. If you have any examples, feel free to put those in as well so we can check them out. And who knows, if we get enough, we may do another um, subgenres of horror that we forgot in the
Or if
future.
we butchered one, maybe we butchered your favorite subgenre. Maybe we didn't give it the love it deserved, and you want to make sure that we know that. You can throw that in there too.
Yep, absolutely. All righty, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing because I think it's now time for, and let me unblur myself um, so that we can actually see my book. It's time for the Not Stephen King book of the week. And this is Elaine by Ben Arzate. I'm probably saying his name wrong. Um,
Can you lift it up a little higher? Yeah, I think you got it.
yeah. So this book is actually quite surprising. It is a mind bender. This guy, Chris, is going to meet his girlfriend in her hometown for her mother's funeral. And she calls him and says, "Hey, the road's out. You're going to have to take the train." So the only way in or out of this town called Elaine is to go on the train. And when he gets to the train station, the woman's name behind the counter is Elaine. When he gets to Elaine, he's running into all kinds of women named Elaine. So it's kind of like every single woman in this town is Elaine. So it's um, he can't find his girlfriend, so he ends up hanging out with her dad. And then the dad like drops him off somewhere and takes off. So this guy's in this strange town. He can't get a hold of his girlfriend. He doesn't know where she is. They're supposed to be at her mother's funeral. Um, it's just weird and culty. So it's kind of like got a cult vibe to it. I don't want to say too much. I don't want
It
to
kind of
actually.
feels like Bizarro,
Yeah.
but
Um,
the simplified Bizarro. It sounds
yeah.
interesting though.
Yeah.
The whole thing,
It's really
and I got to
interesting.
be honest with you, I wouldn't have picked it up.
Yeah.
The cover. I get it now that you've explained it, but it doesn't.
Yeah. If I had
It
seen this on a
confuses
shelf,
me.
I probably would not have picked it up. Um, I would have been like, oh, and you see it's like a little bit browned here.
Uh-huh.
That's actually the way the cover is, because
All
I
right.
looked it up on Amazon when I was leaving my review, and that's the way it looks on the Amazon picture too.
You know what's funny is I say that, and at the same time, I might have picked it up just because I'm like, what is this manual doing
Yeah.
amidst all these other
Yeah,
books?
what is this? Is this like a toy train
But
like
at the same
thing?
time, yeah, no, because your description of it is 1,000 times more um, interesting than
Yeah.
just the thing. So,
Yeah, so
um,
there's like this weird preacher on TV. It's like the only like station, and the preacher's talking about molesting his daughter. But it's like, normal, and he's like talking to his
yeah,
girlfriend's
this
dad,
sounds
like,
like Bizarro. This does feel
yeah.
like a Bizarro thing. Now, I have a question for you though. How did you find this?
So interesting enough. So Ben um offered on Facebook that if you donated to either Planned Parenthood or another foundation that would go for women's rights and abortions, he would send you a book. And I am a supporter of Planned Parenthood, so I donated and I said, hey, send me a book. I had never read anything from him. Um, and he sent me, because he's like, oh, which one do you want? I'm like, surprise me. It doesn't matter. And he sent me Elaine, and I read it. There's a follow-up short story, I Am a Marionette, that kind of explains more about what happens. It doesn't give you all the answers, but it does clear up some of the
A
answers.
few
So
more. Okay, well, that's an
yeah,
interesting way to do it, though. I mean, so
yeah,
we're talking about a book you're suggesting that straight out of the blue, you got it with no idea what it was going to be like, and it's good. It was good enough that you wanted to share it with it. I mean, that right
yeah,
there tells me everything I need to know. This is a book people need to read.
yeah.
So
It,
that's
it,
cool. That's an
it,
interesting way.
yeah. It's very much a mind bender. I wouldn't say it's too scary. It's not
And
super
you know what?
horrific.
I was gonna
It's
say
not.
some of those are a lot of times
Yeah,
mind benders aren't, it just
yeah,
depends on the person and the situation. Now, if you were maybe in a situation like you said it was cultish, if maybe you grew up in something that you felt was a little cultish, it might be 10 times scarier than a regular person
right.
that didn't have that experience. But I I think that's an awesome way to find a book. How cool is
Yeah,
that? You
yep.
blindly got one and it was, a lot of times people will blindly send you something and it's terrible.
Mhm.
So I am excited to hear that that you got it and it was that good.
Yep.
Is that the third book? That's the third book we've suggested, right? You've
Yes.
had
Yep.
two and I've had the one. So
Yep.
I'm not gonna have a cool story for the next book. I'll probably be like, oh, I like the cover, but no, I love that. I think that's a cool story to go with it. I mean, that
Yeah.
tells you something. People need to go out and read this book if you're
Yeah, for
suggesting it.
sure. Yep.
And that's the whole point of this not Stephen King book is we
Hmm.
want you guys to read stuff that might slip under the radar because you're not expecting it. It's not getting enough love. And I have to be honest with you, I'd never heard of the writer or the book until tonight, and so I'm excited to throw that on my list. I want to go check it out. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super interesting, and you definitely have to pick up. I believe the follow-up short story is on Amazon. Is on Kindle Unlimited. So
Okay, so look how cool that is. So you go.
yeah.
I bet you the story is too. If you have
Yeah.
Kindle Unlimited,
Probably.
there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
people are missing. There's a lot of cool stuff you're missing because it's getting buried,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Because when I posted about this book, I was like, oh, Ben, I really need to know more. And he's like, well, there's a follow-up. And I immediately went to Amazon and saw it was on Kindle Unlimited. And I'm like, yep, rent or
Awesome.
borrow or whatever, read for free on Kindle Unlimited.
And remember, everybody, we'll put links below. So if you didn't catch the name of the book or the name of the writer, or you got drowned out in all of us talking about it, every time you'll find these books in the links because we want you guys to check it out. And that's if you don't put anything in the comments about anything except for your, if you like or didn't like the book we suggested, I'd love to see that. It'd be
Yeah.
awesome to see everybody's opinions on some of these books, or if it's a book you already knew about, we're idiots for not knowing about it, or I'm an
Right,
idiot for not
right.
knowing about
Yeah.
it.
How come
So
it took you so long to read
I know,
that?
right? I hate that sometimes. Somebody like, I can't believe you haven't read this. And it'll be something that you thought was obscure, but it turns out that everybody else has read it. That's always
Yeah.
like a fun feeling. So
You're like, oh, you've all heard of this before?
yeah, I know, right? It's like,
I'm
oh,
just learning
whoops.
of it today.
So all right,
All
very
right.
cool. I think that's amazing. I love that. I think that's a great way to end the show right there with that
Yep.
book.
Yep. So everybody, thank you for watching. Tune in next week or next episode when we discuss what's in the box.
Yep. See you guys next time.